Hi there, my name is Pascal and today I'm going to show you how you can focus stack using a macro rail. So let's get started. Okay, so why would you focus stack? Just a quick recap, I explained it in last week's video, which I link up here somewhere. Also, focus stack is basically that if you take a picture with any given aperture, you will have some parts of the picture being in focus and some parts of the picture being out of focus. Focus stacking is basically taking several of these pictures, and in each picture you move the sharp part of the image further into the picture depth-wise or further out of the picture. And then in post you're going to combine all of these pictures to get the maximum of sharp part of your image. Now, especially in macro photography, this technique is very important since you will have a razor thin field of view or sharp part of your image basically. Today we're going to do that not handheld, but using a simple macro rail. Now this thing cost me about 40 euros or something around that, and it's entirely manual, so it's pretty budget. Anything else that you might need is of course a subject, a lens, camera body, and I would recommend using an intervalometer. Basically none of these things except a subject is required. You could do the same thing using your phone mounting onto any given rail and using a timer on your camera or on your phone, whatever. Today I'm using my D5600 and the Nikkor 105mm. And as the subject, as in last week's video, I chose these lovely little roses here, and I spread a little bit of water onto them so that there are some water drops as some interesting, let's say, highlights. Okay, this setup. You need some kind, probably you need some kind of tripod, at least for my macro rail. It does not balance itself well if it's standing loosely on the ground. Therefore, I'm using simply like this gorilla pod here, placing the macro rail on top, and on top of the rail there's sitting my camera. Now what we're going to do is we're framing up the subject, which I did in advance already, and then we're going to take several pictures. Now, I'm going to take the first picture for now, and I currently can tell you that I'm at 100th of a second, f4.8 and ISO 200. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to do is I take a sample picture and show you what the current depth of field looks like in this picture. So we're focusing up, I'm just checking if it's everything fine, and it is looking good, and we're just taking the picture. Alright, as you can see, it is very, very thin, or the sharp parts of the picture are very, very thin. Now what you can do is basically, then as the next step, you're moving the camera towards your subject, and you're using obviously this macro rail. Now for my macro rail it works like this. You just twist this little knob here and the camera moves forward, therefore changing what parts of your image are in focus. Okay, so again I'm taking one picture for the starting picture, and then I'm moving my macro rail. You want to move in very little increments to take care of or basically to ensure that the sharp part of your images are overlapping, so that Photoshop later on can merge them together more easily. Okay, so we're just moving just a tiny bit like so, and taking the next picture, and we're continuing doing that. So that will take a while, so we'll see in a bit. Okay, so now I have taken around 15 pictures. That is perfectly enough for what I first want to show you and second want to create in the first place. So we're just wrapping this up and moving on to the computer. So let's go. Alright, so now I've loaded all of the pictures onto the computer and we're already in Photoshop. Now, essentially we're doing the same as last week. We're just going into File, Scripts, Load Files into Stack. Now again, we need to navigate to the directory where is stored all of the pictures, which is basically here. Now I just want to use for the focus stack these 15 pictures, and I hit OK. Now what I want to do as well is I want Photoshop to attempt to automatically align the source images. Once that is done, we hit OK and wait for Photoshop to work. Alright, so now that Photoshop has loaded all of the images into the stack, we can do the same as last week. We just select all layers like so, and then we select Edit, Auto Blend Layers. We want to stack the images since we want to blend the exposure focus part, of course. And then we're saying seamless tones and colors and content aware fill transparent areas, and just hit OK, and then we wait again. Alright, so now Photoshop has generated basically the output, and to be honest, it looks pretty good for just 15 pictures in the stack. Now, as you can see, we have tons of sharp parts in the image. What I wanted to put the focus on was basically the middle part here. But we could go ahead and basically paint out this upper part here so that this is out of focus. But one thing that you want to keep in mind is, even though you're using a focus rail, you might end up with a picture that still has washed out areas basically in between your sharp parts, which is basically due to a user mistake basically. So I did that right around here. So these parts of the image definitely should be somewhat in focus. But if I zoom in, you see that these are still not sharp, even though they should be. That is when I moved the rail from one picture to another. So basically this part, this picture here was sharp, and the jump to here was just too far. So this part should be in, here should be another picture in between, which would make this entire part here also sharp. That can happen, so you just have to basically be aware of that. And again, as a rule of thumb, just take more pictures than you might think you need up in the end, just to be on the safe side basically. So again, this was another quick Photoshop tutorial, including focus stacking a little bit here and there. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a thumbs up, that would help me out a lot. And we will see each other in the next video next week. Until then, happy shooting!